Hi, welcome to Julie's Yard and Garden. We're going to be talking today about how big should your garden be. If you're brand new to gardening, it might be a good idea to start off with something small. Just maybe a couple of square feet or maybe 4 square feet. Totally up to you and how much you want to garden, and maybe start with a couple of things at once. Sometimes you can get a little bit overexcited. I know I do. There's a lot of times I get a little bit overexcited and think I'm going to plant this and this and this, and then I'm in over my head. So if you're starting brand new with gardening, maybe pick 2 or 3 things that you'd really like to try. During most of my videos, I usually show close-ups of my garden, and I don't zoom out very far just because I don't have a lot of garden space. In fact, most of my garden space, well, pretty much all of my garden space is between my house and a wall, and I've just kind of fit everything in just because that's where I had the space. Because I have so much concrete, I did end up taking a couple of compost bins and cutting them in half. Added 3 extra beds on top of the concrete. I left the other one just over there so I can grow some things in there as well. I also have a bed over here that actually stays in the shade. It gets morning sun and evening sun, and during the heat of the summer, this is where I will plant my lettuces and my greens so that they will not wilt, and then I can grow greens pretty much all through the summer. I also have a combination of raised bed and in-ground gardening. On the other side of my raised beds, I have some ground that I've just planted directly in. This is where I will plant my vining plants, like my butternut squash, cantaloupe, watermelon, and then that way they can grow out across the concrete and take up a little bit more space, but it doesn't take up the space necessarily in where the soil is. It just goes across the concrete, and I use up the space that way. Square footage wise, I totaled it all up, and I was kind of approximate because the in-ground garden over there goes from about 29 inches at the widest point to just under 21 inches at the smallest point. And I've got about 100 square feet of growing space, which actually surprised me. I thought it would be a lot less. But that just shows that you can actually pack a lot of growing space into a small area. One of the things that will actually help decide how much space you want to use for your garden is what you want to plant. How many things do you want to put in that take up a lot of space for a little yield? Strawberries are kind of one of those things. I love to have strawberries in my garden. They do take up a lot of space, but they don't get me as many strawberries as you would necessarily be able to pick up easily from the grocery store. So it's totally up to you how much you want to plant and what it is you want to plant. One of the things that I do in my garden, in my raised beds, is I use the square foot gardening method. I'll tell you about that in another video. One of the things to ask yourself when you're trying to figure out how large of a garden you should have is how much time do you have to actually harvest it? How much time do you have to work in it? And do you have enough water to keep it alive? That's another big one. Coming off of a really bad drought this last summer, I chose not to plant as much just so that I wouldn't have to water a whole bunch of garden area. One more thing to think about that not everybody has to deal with, but I know of lots of people that do have to deal with, is are you going to have deer that wander into your yard and expect you to share your garden with them? That might be another thing. If you have to fence off a space, you may need to determine how much space you use depending on how much of a fence that you can afford to keep those deer out. Unfortunately, that's a reality for some people. I'm glad I don't have to deal with that issue. I hope this gives you a few things to think about for your garden. Until next time, grow something you love and just have fun with it.